everybody. My name is Dark Sage Walker, and hey, surprise! I bet you thought I forgot about this, didn't you? Well, no. No. One Step from Eden has been one of my favorite games that's been released this year, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna leave this unfinished. So, we've made it most of the way through all of the spell focuses. We only have 2 left, and today we're having a look at the Phalanx spells. The Phalanx spells are known for being all about shielding and protection. So, in other words, they're kind of important, but how important are they? Well, we're going to get into that right now. And as far as I'm concerned, most of the spells here deserve a high ranking. The ones that don't, well, you'll get the idea, but the usual rules will of course apply. Every spell will be rated just by itself as it stands, just without any other synergies. But I will be talking about the synergies if they exist, because they can be kind of important. But otherwise, all of the usual rules apply for my One Step from Eden tier list videos. And as you can see, I'm also using a different browser this time, so hey, fun for me, I've evolved. So, let's get into it. These are my rankings for One Step from Eden's Phalanx spells, and we'll be starting with Blessing of Susano. You know, the big laser being fired off by what looks to be a cat wearing a stocking cap. Gain 100 shield and charge for 1 second to fire a huge laser. Now, the damage it deals is 40 damage per shot, and it basically how many times the beam ticks damage. It ticks damage 4 times, so it's 160 damage and 100 shield for 5 mana, and a little bit of an anchor. Also, it does unfortunately consume. Now, if it weren't... Now, all of those things put together, if it didn't consume, it would be S rank. If it didn't anchor you, it would be S rank. If you didn't have to sit still for a second to charge it, it would be S rank. And yeah, you can get rid of that with an upgrade, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about. And once you take into account upgrades, because you can upgrade it so that it doesn't anchor, you can upgrade it so it hits more times. There is a lot you can do to make Blessing of Susano better. It's versatile, it's strong, it gives you a lot of shield. My biggest issue with it is that it only does it once and it costs a lot of mana. So I can't put it in S grade, but I've gotten a lot of success out of Blessing of Susano. I am putting it in A grade. There's really just no other way to put it. To me, it's reliable. But that's also because I have a very different play style than most people. I understand that, I respect other people's thoughts on the spell, but I think it belongs in A. Counter-Strike. Fire a shot and gain 50 shield. It fires 1 shot that does 70 damage, and it costs 2 mana. Real honestly, I have nothing bad to say about this spell. It does damage, it does shielding. It only costs 2 mana, so most characters can use it right out of the box. Counter-Strike is amazing. I have nothing else to say about that spell, just if you see it, you take it. There's a few of these spells where if you see them, you take them. Again, pretty much no questions asked. Diamond Ring. While in a cast slot, gain 4 shield every second. That sounds iffier than it is. It can actually be really useful, especially the way that I play, where I tend to bulk up on spells. Pardon me. Where I tend to bulk up on spells, so one slot will generally be left alone for quite a while I'm sitting casting spells out of one slot continuously. So Diamond Ring works very well for my playstyle. From what I can tell, most people play small deck strats, and for them, Diamond Ring probably wouldn't be too useful. I personally find it to be an A rank spell myself, but if you prefer small deck strats, you're probably going to want to put it down at a B. It's still good, just not as good, but for me personally, it belongs there. Now, removing my bias from the equation, I think I will move it down to B, because a lot of people aren't going to see it to be as useful as I do. So, once again, I have to remember to remove my own bias from the equation if I'm going to be talking about these spells. Entrench. Gain 80 shield and root self for 2 seconds. If you have fragile, remove root. So it's not that hard to gain fragile on yourself, especially if you're playing as Violet. And 80 shield comes at a pretty heavy premium, especially in the higher Hell Pass ranks, where your maximum health is taken a hit. It costs 1 mana. For 1 mana for 80 shield, like, the downside isn't too much of a downside. You can generally find 2 seconds worth of time to drop this and get yourself some protection. I personally say it belongs up there. I got nothing bad to say about that spell. Fate Shield. Gain 200 shield, but lose 200 shield when this hits a target. It only costs 1 mana, and it does fire like a line across the battlefield, and as soon as it hits something hostile, it just kind of goes away. So it's 200 shield while that line is traveling, and before the spell got reworked, I would say, yeah, it's probably a C grade spell. Definitely not a D, but not great either. So here's how they reworked it. Instead of taking up the entire battlefield as if it were like a tempo line moving across a scale, now it only takes up 3 lines, sometimes only 2 if you cast it at the very top or bottom edge of the battlefield, and the line moves slower, so it's a pretty respectable 200 shield gain for a decent amount of time. Hi, birds. I'm still not convinced that it's like top grade material, but for 1 mana you could do a lot worse. I'm putting it here at A rank. Fort, or Forte, I believe it's pronounced Fort. How you doing, buddy? Yeah, I'm talking a lot, so Cecil's trying to get my attention. He wants to have a conversation. Gain 150 shield and consume. It costs 3 mana, and for 150 shield, again, that's not bad. And if you get double cast on it, that's 300 shield, but it does cost 5 mana, so that's a downside. Also, the idea that it consumes and costs 3 mana, like, I think it should be one or the other. It should cost 3 mana but not consume, or it should consume but only cost 2 mana. That's just my 2 cents on the situation. I'm still putting it up in A rank because that spell has saved my skin a lot. It's great for getting yourself set up early battle. And if you're going through long battles like, you know, the higher ranked bosses or the higher ranked hell passes, Fort can really get you out of a bind. But again, it would be better if it didn't consume or if it cost less mana. Just saying. Ice Shield. Gain 140 shield, but also gain Frost and Fragile. I have issues with Ice Shield. It only costs 2 mana, and if you really need the shield, by all means take it. But the problem is, so you basically get 2 uses of it, and then you take a bunch of damage for Frost, which I think, I don't know, but especially when things get hectic, what's gonna happen is you're gonna gain some shield, you're gonna lose a bunch of it because you've been hit with Fragile, and then after a few uses, you're degrading some of the use of it and your own health because you're also gaining stacks of Frost. So my problem with Ice Shield is that it's a little self-destructive. It's not absolutely useless, but it's pretty close. I'm putting it at C, and that's a low C. I'm just making sure we're all aware of that. I'm not a fan of Ice Shield. I think, especially considering that it's a rare spell, I think that they should remove the fragility from it. That way it's a risk-reward. Gain a bunch of shield all at once, but you take some damage later. So by putting Fragile on it, the only way I can recommend it is if you also have Entrench and it's coming up pretty quick. So it's a way to give yourself fragility if you're not playing as Violet, but it comes at the cost of putting Frost on yourself. And unless you have ways of managing that Frost or turning it into something positive, I'm not sold on Ice Shield. I wish it were better. I think in order to really make this spell pop, they need to either make it so you get more shield from using it, or so that you don't get fragile. Frost I can understand. That's essentially risk-reward gameplay. But fragile? I don't know, I think that's kind of killing the whole purpose of it entirely. Iron Will! When this hits, give the target 180 shield. It costs 0 and does 200 damage. So if you're using this as the final stroke in combat, that's great. That's kind of what it's intended for. Problem is, more often than not, when you use it, when you have it in your deck, it's going to be something that just kind of sits there and doesn't do anything until your target is at under 200 health. And that's a pretty big window, but if for some reason you don't throw it in time and they regenerate to above 200 health, like, let's say for instance you're fighting something, it doesn't even matter, and you see that it's down to 180 health, you're like, alright, line myself up, throw Iron Will. As you're throwing it, it gains 50 health. Now, instead of being at 180, it's at 230, which means it now has essentially 210 health, which means you've only done 20 damage and you now have more work ahead of yourself. So, I think it has uses, but generally I don't take it. To me, it's iffy. Someone else may get much more use out of it, and hey, more power to you. Just, to me, it's a little too iffy. Miss Me Shield. Gain 60 shield, but lose 60 shield if this hits an enemy. The only bad thing I have to say about this is that when things get frantic in higher ranked hell passes, it can be really difficult to get yourself some shield off of this, because it's not just if it hits an enemy, it's also like if it hits a rock, if it hits a structure, you know, something that can take damage, then that shield gain just kind of goes and no more shield for you. So this one, I think, and it only costs 1 mana, so it can be worth taking unless you're going after the wall. And at that point, even then, most battles up until the Gate of Eden, you'll still get some gain out of it. But for most other situations, or not for most other situations, I'm sorry, my brain is getting mixed up, go figure. For most situations, it's fine, but for busy battles or battling the Gate of Eden, this spell is actually almost entirely useless. So it has incredibly high highs, it has incredibly low lows. I think the most reasonable place to put it is A rank, with the proviso that it could be worse than that. Reflector. Gain Reflect for 0.6 of a second. It only costs 1 mana, and whereas getting Reflect is great, I think having it in spell form like this is really iffy. Now again, it can be really good because it'll basically reflect any source of oncoming damage for 0.6 of a second, or roughly, see, at 60 frames per second. So 6 times, so basically for 36 frames, you have yourself a reflector shield. And I'm not going to say it's bad. What I'm going to say is that maybe it should last longer than that. Maybe it should last for either 0.8 of a second or a full second in order to be really all that abusable. Now, I understand why when you're playing as Riva, her raising her shield to reflect doesn't last very long. That's because it's just a permanent effect of the character. When you have to find the spell and then realize it only lasts for 36 frames, maybe you can do better. So I think they should just improve the duration of the spell to make it more usable. It's still not bad, but normally I don't take it because it's a little bit too hard to make use of that. And it's not to say that, you know, oh, you're just bad at the game, you can't time out when to use Reflector. No, not the problem. The problem is in a game as fast-paced as One Step from Eden, the Reflector doesn't last long enough to really act as a true source of protection. And not only that, but it doesn't reflect the damage source right back to the target. It reflects it in a straight line from where you're standing. So a target could hit you with like a homing attack or like a big area of effect, and you can reflect it, but then not hit them with it. It just feels incredibly underwhelming. That's the point that I'm getting at. I never said it was bad, just underwhelming. That's why I'm putting it at B. Shield Beam, probably one of the absolute best spells you can get in the game. When this hits, gain 20 shield. You also get anchored, but that's not the point. So, some interesting ways to use Shield Beam. First of all, upgrade it so it scores more hits, because every time it hits, you get that 20 shield. So if you get like +2 shots, now you've got an 80 damage attack that's giving you 80 shield. That's really good. If there's more than one thing in a row, hit all of those things, and they'll take that 40 damage. But say you can only hit 2 things with it. That's cool. You're still getting 80 shield, because this just tramples over an entire row. That's amazing. And, or if you get the upgrade that says bonus 20 shield, that doesn't mean that you use it, you just get 20 shield in this case. What it means is that you hit something with it, and they're taking 20 damage, but now you're gaining 40 shield per hit. Shield Beam is absolutely amazing. Like, this is one of the premier spells from Phalanx, and I will hear no argument about it going in S rank. That's absolutely where it belongs. Shield Beam has saved my ass in so many runs, I can't even begin to count. So yeah, Shield Beam. Shield Beam. I goddamn love Shield Beam. Shield Catch. Catch this to gain 60 shield. It only costs 1 mana, and for the most part it's usable. My only issue with it is that sometimes in a really busy fight it can be hard to find a quiet moment to catch the item that it throws out to get your shield. But for 1 mana and to get 60 shield, it's generally worth it. I'm not putting it in S rank though, I think it belongs in A. I still say that it's a good spell, but sometimes, especially on the higher Hell Pass difficulties, it can be really difficult to find a quiet moment. And say you do find a quiet moment and throw it out, some enemies attack really quickly and really aggressively, so you'll throw it out, and by the time you're in place to catch it, another one of your enemies will be attacking that spot as well. So it's, I mean, for the most part, it's, you know, risk versus reward. We'll just put it that way. Now, the next spell on the list is not the next spell that I have an icon for, but I'll go in order that I have it on this list here. The next thing we're going to talk about is Shield Throw. Fire a shot that deals damage equal to your shield. Lose all shield. Catch to regain your shield. This spell is dangerous. Allow me to explain. So you're playing as Riva. You've been running around, you've been doing everything to protect yourself. You've got 300, 400 shield. That's fucking fantastic. Now Shield Throw comes up and you're like, oh sweet, I have a chance to nail the boss here. And you line yourself up, you get yourself all ready to win the boss fight. You miscalculate their movement, you throw it, and it misses. That shot doesn't bounce back once it hits the opposite end of the enemy's field. It just flies off forever. It's gone. 300 shields out the window. Completely wasted. And that, to me, is the problem with Shield Throw, is that it seems like a great way to attack. It seems like it should be the perfect method for a defensive deck to really get in there and get things going. But unless you have a very reliable source of slower root, this is a beginner's trap. You're going to throw it, and it's going to miss, or you're not going to be able to get to catch up to it again, and you're going to get slapped while you're vulnerable. And especially on high hell passes, that's a deal breaker. So I almost never take Shield Throw, and when I'm playing as Riva, I will actively get rid of Shield Throw and just look for a good attack like Airblade. So Does that make it a D rank spell? In my personal opinion, no, it still doesn't, because there is still potential for the spell. First of all, it only costs 1 mana, and second of all, if you do throw it, hit the enemy, and regain your shield before you take damage in the interim period, you've essentially just got yourself a free, like, super whack. So, it has potential. But do I think that it's worth using over other forms of attack? Personally, no. I would say if you're gonna use shield throw, use it with caution, and I mean a lot of caution, because you're putting yourself at serious risk throwing that out there. And say you do, and again, I've already brought this up, but say you do Captain America your shield and miss, it's not coming back to you like Captain America's shield eventually does by, you know, miracle of odd writing. No, that thing's just gone. You know, I have my issues with shield throw. Like I said, I don't take it, but maybe someone else has better luck with it. Maybe. I personally just find that I can't trust it. Shields up. Gain 40 shield. That's it. You just use it and you get 40 shield. There's nothing else to say about it. You use it, you get 40 shield. It only costs 1 mana, so anyone can use it out of the box. It's just good protection for a cheap price. You can add the bonus shield upgrade. You can do the double cast upgrade. And right behind Shield Beam, I say Shields Up is probably the next best Phalanx spell. It's just absolutely incredible. And it's a really short description. I got nothing else to say. Spell Shield. Gain 120 shield and backfire. Costs 2 mana. So this spell is a very interesting one, and I don't think it's going to necessarily fit every deck archetype because of the backfire. And what backfire does is it makes it so that whatever spell is in your other slot gets consumed. So the times in which Spell Shield is worth it, if it's the last spell in your deck, you've essentially got a freebie. And keep in mind, it's 120 shield. It's 3 times as much shield that you get from Shields Up for only 1 more mana cost. So it's worth finding a way to make it work. But now, continuing on, other ways to make it work. If the spell that's in the other slot is one that you're not necessarily going to need, like let's say you're in a short fight and you don't necessarily need Caltrops in order to win the fight, then it's worth using. Let's say the other spell is Ember. I don't recommend taking garbage spells just to sacrifice the Spell Shield, but let's say you just have it for whatever reason. Cool, use Spell Shield on it. Don't you have to worry about it anymore? You can just get 120 shield. That's good for any time you have just a trash spell in your deck. I play with large deck strats, and one of the things that you can do when Spell Shield comes up is, like I've been saying, evaluate whether or not you think you're going to need the spell, and then if you don't need it, get rid of it. It's real easy to do that, and then the last scenario is using it to get rid of, like, a jam. Most decks don't need jams for anything, and they're going to just consume anyway, so why not spend a little bit? It's the same amount you'd be spending to get rid of the jam. Why not just use Spell Shield to get rid of the jam and get 120 shield in the process? Unless your deck uses jams for something, like say you have Jam Slam or Jam Cannon, and I've said jam so many times it's starting to sound funny now, but that's the only time in which I would say, you know, don't use Spell Shield on a jam. Otherwise, yeah, in those scenarios, or even in a kunai deck where you're probably going to be getting a billion kunais, yeah, feel free to sacrifice one to get yourself some shield. That protection goes a long way. So I will put Spell Shield up here. Now, I'm guilty of not taking this spell when I should. It's good protection, and I should be taking it more often. Stasis. Freeze for 2 seconds and gain 999 shield until unfrozen. And of course you anchor. This one is interesting. I haven't found a great use for it yet, but it doesn't mean that it has no use. Now, if you're one of the people out there that plays PvP, this is essentially just a throwaway. You'll take it, you'll use it, and then anyone who knows what's going on will just wait for 2 seconds for that 999 shield to go away, and then continue attacking. Unless they have something that hits through shield, in which case you're wasting your time, mate. So there are uses for stasis. There absolutely are. For weathering a huge storm, like when you're up against the Gate of Eden, and you've got like the hit scan lasers and the beam cannons and the thing that just sprays crap into the air all going at once. You can use this to give yourself a temporary reprieve, but just understand that you're probably going to have to be dodging your ass off as soon as it unfreezes. So, I don't know. I kind of rate it as a B. I think they're better spells to take to boost your defense. And finally, we have Steel Skin. Gain 40 defense for 3 seconds. I actually think this is more useful than most people give it credit for. Now, if you have a bunch of shields, this doesn't really work very well. Unless you have the hardened shield relic, in which case then the defense does help your shielding. But as it exists, it's kind of a weird niche where you use it when you don't have shields in order to make sure that you can weather a storm. And again, it only costs 1 mana, so I think it's worth it, but it's also difficult to describe. It's one of those things where you use it basically just to survive a storm. And other people will probably have other ideas and other ways to use Steel Skin. That's just my 2 cents on it. I still say it belongs in A rank, because any amount of defense is better than no amount of defense, and especially on higher hell ranks where if things get crazy, your shield isn't lasting very long anyway, you're going to be happy to have Steel Skin to help you survive. So, that is my list. That's what I think of the Phalanx spells, and as you can see, there are way more spells that are high ranked than way more spells that are low ranked, and nothing fell into D rank. So to me, this is easily the most reliable and worthwhile of focuses to take. You take Phalanx, you do what you can to get these 4 spells and maybe 1 or 2 of these, and then you're usually set to go for the entirety of the run. And if you're working small deck strats, you probably only need like 1 or 2 of the top rank spells. But that's my list. Let me learn how to speak English. It's been too long. I should know how to say things, god damn it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I appreciate you coming to spend time with me. If you agree with what I say, or with what I've said, let me know. If you disagree, also let me know. I'm plenty willing to listen to what people have to say about the spells, and sometimes if information is brought up that I didn't know, I'm totally happy to change my mind on something. It just takes a well-reasoned argument and some convincing, that's all. So that having been said, I am going to call this one a day. We only have 1 tier list to go, and that is for the slash fix spells, and those ones are going to be kind of all over the place. But anyway, I appreciate you spending time with me. I'm going to stop rambling now, do the YouTube stuff, and I will see you guys in a future video. My name is Dark Sage Walker, and I will be seeing you.